Using the template we created earlier, set the first page ID to page_home. Create an Add button to the right of the header in the home page. Link the button to the page_add. Copy the entire page div and duplicate as your page_add page. Update the comments before and after the page to reflect the new page. Update the ID of the new page to page_add. Test run to see if the link works. Remember to change the header of the second page to add to differentiate them. Create an unordered list in the page_home with ID equals to list_context. Create a filter in the unordered list by setting the data filter attribute to true. Go to the second page_add div. Create two pairs of label and input where input is text to create the text fields. First input is to take in name and second is to take in description. Remember to give it a unique ID. Create a button which you will later use it to interact with the form. I want the button to go back to the home page, hence I use an anchor tag instead. To make anchor tags appear like a button, set data row attribute to be a button and give it an ID button_add. Now you have a form interface with an add button. Let's work on the logic in JavaScript now. Create a new line between jQuery and jQuery Mobile JavaScript. Create a script tag, build your codes in a self-executing function using the jQuery selector function. This is actually the same as jQuery selector document.ready. Declare a persist array variable as array to take in multiple objects to store the complex name and description information. I want to create a temporary object data to test display my list view. Create a variable called person and instantiate an object by using the curly brace syntax. This is one way to create an object with predefined properties. Alternatively, you can create an object first, then specify its properties. In this person object, I'm going to assign a name and description. Let's create a second person using the curly brace syntax. It works the same as above. Make sure you push the person object into the array before you create the next person. If not, the person variable will be overridden. Now I'm going to use a loop to loop through the persons array. For each time it goes into a data in the array, there are actually two data in the array now, I'm going to add a list item which contains the name of the person of position I in the array. I wrap the name around in a h2 tag to make the text look bold. There is some typo here, let me fix it. I will split it up and make it look neater for you to understand. Now I'm going to concatenate, add in a paragraph pair to wrap the description. If I run this file now, it will go into each object stored in the persons array and add its name and description into the list view in a list item. Now I need to create a new function called addPerson. This function is going to be used by the button later when I click it. The addPerson basically does what I did in trying to create a new person. Move the codes which I created the person object and push it into the array. Put it into the function. Replace the dummy data of name and description with the value from the text fields. Use the jQuery selector to look for the text field name, to look for the text field with the ID. Now remove away the dummy data I created earlier to test the list view. Create a new function called refresh contact list. This function will be called every time a new person has been added to the refresh the list view. Move the loop you created earlier to populate the list view into the function. Assign an event handler, click to the element of the ID button underscore add. Assign the handler to perform add person when the button is clicked. Assign an event handler to the page underscore home. This event handler is to make sure that the page underscore home is refreshed before the page before show event happens when you navigate from one page to another. So assuming you click add and move back into home page, you want to see a refresh view. Now test adding of a person into the interface. The adding is done, however it does not show up properly. This is because jQuery Mobile does additional CSS styling to the list whenever it's created, so data added subsequently is not transformed into jQuery Mobile format. To do this, refresh the list view programmatically. In quotes, after the for loop has run finished, but still within the refresh contact list function, invoke the refresh by jQuery select list contacts list view refresh again. Try the application again now. Now if you try to add multiple data entries into the list, it will retain the existing list. This will show up double entry of the old and new array. In order to prevent this from happening, clear the HTML content of the list view. This will make sure that the array data is freshly added to the list view instead of adding onto the existing list. Next, create a new update local storage function to store your person's array into the persistent local storage. The unique local storage I'm using in this example is app, localStorage.app. Remember to stringify the array as local storage can only store string value. At the start of the code, I'm going to check if the localStorage.app is empty. If it is not, I'm going to populate my person's array with data from the local storage. Remember to pass the data as the local storage is string data to use object data structure. Now call the update local storage to update the storage every time you add a new person. Call the function at the last of add person instructions. Try your application and now you have a basic app that stores data persistently. Even if you were to refresh or kill the app, the next time you start it up, it will retain the previous data stored.